I built nothing but Lego dragons for 4 months straight, and while plenty of them were new sets to me, and others were not, wow am I all dragoned out. Now I'm sure you're asking, why did you subject yourself to that, Pen? Well, I'm glad you asked. You see, I got knee-deep into a conversation with my friends over at Masters of Brickjitsu about ninjago dragon wings and which ones were the best kinds. I became emboldened to build as many of the dragons in my collection to find that out. I made it into a video hosted on their channel, which you can click the link above or in the description to see the results of that if you'd like. In this process, I found out what I like and don't like about these dragons. Which ones were the most fun to build, which ones were my favorites, a whole mess of things. I learned so much, and I thought I'd share my feelings on them with you. So, the first question is, how many dragons did I build? I built 25 dragons in total, 13 of which had never been freed from their box until that point. The rest were from sets dating back from 2017 all the way back to 2011, so there was still a huge pool of sets that were completely fresh to me. There were 5 dragons I had already built before I went on my dragon building journey that fit perfectly in that video I made, and you may see them pop up here in this video too if they serve as a good example. Of this bunch, the biggest dragon I built was Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon. The smallest one was the Cowler Dragon. Yes, for that video I even built a dragon from a poly bag. It wasn't the simplest dragon though. I built 3 4+ dragons, and I feel these sets get a bad rep for being simplified. They do it in an elegant way that I appreciate, but that doesn't justify their prices unfortunately. The mold for Kai's Fire Dragon, the 4+ version, got reused for the Legacy version, and to be honest, it makes his head look super tiny, especially compared to the original set's head, which is one of LEGO's most iconic dragons. It's crazy to think how earlier dragons were more a sum of a bunch of other themes parts, as these 3 have quite an impressive pool of pieces from the original generation of Bionicle sets to make their functions work. The most iconic being these sphere launchers, which made me realize just how few dragons these days have launchers for their elemental breath. I did build quite a few of them that do though, and of them, Jay's Cyber Dragon is probably my favorite. Meant to appear more as a machine, considering its origins as a video game boss, it hides them discreetly in its torso, but that's not the reason I love it. It's the fact it's designed to still bend at the abdomen without triggering the spring-loaded shooters. Perfect execution. Sure, Stormbringer has the same launchers too, and while it is quite discreet about it, it comes with compromising its neck. That's not the worst launcher on these. It's the, in air quotes, elemental breath the Legacy Ultra Dragon has. All 4 heads have these eyesore stud shooters on the sides of their heads that are just pitiful when you compare it to the original's menacing look. At least back then, it actually came from the beast's mouth. It's not to say that the heads they do have aren't good. They aren't accurate representations of the original, but they do have fantastic personality. Between 2014 and 2020, LEGO was really big about doing completely brick-built heads, and while some of them are quite strange, others like Firstborn are incredible. Lots of these heads use a simple 2x2 Lego brick with eyes printed on them to give some of these ladder's dragons more flair, which helps a lot. The worst brick-built head of these, which is a challenging build in the best way, thanks to it not having a 2x2 brick at its core, has got to be Lloyd's Green NRG Dragon, which suffers for it despite being one of the best dragons here. I want to talk about its incredible wings here, but please, just go watch the video I made for Masters of Brickjitsu on that. When it comes to wings, I do gotta say one thing. Let's talk about the worst functions these dragons have, starting with Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon. You'll find in that video I made for Masters of Brickjitsu that I'm not a fan of wings made from blades, but this is probably one of my least favorites. Not only do they not flap, they're locked into this obnoxious gearing build that doesn't even remotely emulate wings, at least for me. It sucks because the dragon as a whole is pretty fantastic. Another function that I just can't get behind are these flailing tails. They use the classic LEGO trailer hitch pieces, and albeit effective in functionality, as a guy who poses their dragons and who displays them, these things are just a nuisance. I feel some people might not like that opinion, considering it's an iconic go-to function for the past 13 years worth of dragons, much to my chagrin, but man, I'd be really happy if they were gone forever. The worst instance of this play function is with the Water Dragon. Functionally, it's no different than any other set that uses these pieces, but what sets this one out is that it has one of the longest chains of them, which means managing them is even harder. It doesn't help this dragon has very few decent angles, and how all of them make the tail an even worse inclusion. If it's not very clear, the larger sized dragons really seem to suffer, either functionally or aesthetically in some shape or form, and it really is a shame as some really come close to being fantastic. We talked about Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon, but how about Lloyd's Legendary Dragon? I'd be hard-pressed to find much a flaw with this thing, if its wings were not on a slider, and not even one that feels right for a dragon this shape and size. The Moro Dragon is another one that's aesthetically pleasing and is certainly one of the more memorable dragons, but it's also impressively stiff for what it is. You'd think some of that organic shaping would have some flex to it, but no. Griefbringer here is another dragon where he's just a stiff mess. His lack of joints in both his front legs, as well as his wings, make him look like he's ready to take a reanimated skeleton dragon dookie, but I suppose the intention of structural integrity there helps him just stand there, looming over the game board the wave of sets he came from can form. You shouldn't be surprised to find out that he also has a flailing tail too, which now that we're back on the subject, there is one dragon that got that function handled well. Zippy the Jungle Dragon has a flailed tail too, which adds a lot to his dog-like appearance. This is one of the more unique dragons, both in color and in shape, and part of what sells that is Zippy's head. Two detailed prefab pieces execute this look and make him extremely memorable. They're just 2 of 6 elements across the dragons I built that use these molded heads to their advantage. I gotta be honest, with just how much versatility it is, both in color choices, print designs, and the mix and matching of shapes really make for some of the most complete dragon heads I feel we've got in years. Again, bringing back Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon, it really shows that off to its best with all 4 of its heads and their individualized appearances that match the original 4 Ninjago Ninjas base elements. LEGO introduced, and has since retracted, a line of Ninjago sets that encapsulate the core aspects of Ninjago, which fans dubbed Ninjago Core, that take full advantage of these heads. A good number of these sets are rather basic in execution, so while the heads are nice, a lot of them can't do much with them. However, as a LEGO theme first, one major thing with these smaller dragons from the Ninjago Core line was making it so they can evolve, by building and adding more segments to them, referred to as EVO functionality, as they're an evolution of their previous build form. What most people might not realize is how it adds an impressive layer of modularity between them all. It's zany and strange, but if that doesn't harken back to LEGO's earlier space themes and their interchangeable vehicle segments, I don't know what would. Whew, that's a lot. Now that I've got all that out there, let's talk about which dragons I think are the worst out of the ones that I built. First off is Jay's Elemental Dragon, as it is almost exclusively assembled full of shortcomings and strange shapes that take away from its look rather than accent it. There are a lot of dragons that could have been so much more, but this one might take the cake in that department. Kai's Fire Dragon from Ninjago Legacy is also a low ranker here, which seems odd at a glance as it looks rather extravagant. Sadly, it's plagued by every possible joint and friction issue it can have. These long arms have drawn the wings out extremely far, which work well in rest position, but leave very little to actually support the wings in any other formation. If you want them open, they'll close on you. If you want them closed, they'll fall open. Its extremely long and jacked torso annihilate its center of gravity, so you can only really post it standing with wings open, if it's not on all fours. If I were a kid, I'd be so frustrated with how next to nothing here works aside from its looks, which if we reach that conclusion, it could, perhaps, be the worst dragon LEGO has ever made. Well, it would be the worst if there wasn't the water dragon. I've talked about its tail, but it also is just a functional and design catastrophe. Stiff and flat limbs, nonsensical flaps and fins all around, a literal motorcycle handle at its neck. Its design is beyond chaotic. Its long shape and lack of joints make it basically impossible to put into any attractive position, aside from just letting it sit there and be boring. Add this to one of the weakest wing functions ever devised out of any creature that LEGO has ever made, and I can comfortably say this is, by far, the worst dragon I have ever built. Now, let's talk about the best dragons out of the ones I built. I personally cannot name a number 1 here, as the ones I mention in this selection all have reasons to take that spot. The Jungle Dragon Zippy feels like an eccentric character from all aspects. His design is a masterclass in not just making a fun toy, but also making a fun character that's also fully posable and a joy to build. The functional and aesthetic issues it has can be attributed as the better offerings in comparison to other options, but just look at him. He's like a puppy. Jay Cyber Dragon is one where, if you had told me this set would be here before I built it, I wouldn't have believed you. It's functional, embraces its design direction in a pleasant and creative way, and doesn't compromise its functionality for extra play features. The piece usage for this set is especially a highlight, as some of the choices here are not something you would expect of a set like it. Lastly, I had been told before that Lloyd's legendary dragon was quite fantastic, and while I'm not a fan of its wings' functionality, I could talk your ear off about its shaping and proportions. From its impressively shaped legs to its burly heft, you're left with a build that not only appears that way, but feels that way as well. And that would round out the best. And what a way to top it off too is Lloyd's legendary dragon feels like what all of these dragons was leading up to, which is ironic to say as the last dragon I built, Lloyd's Golden Ultra Dragon, takes a lot of cues from it, and for the better. I look at it and become overwhelmed by the progression we've seen over the course of the time I've been enjoying the hobby. So even though it may have been a task to get through and build all of these dragons, I feel so much more informed in where we've come from with builds like these, and I look forward to building some of the sets from Ninjago Dragons Rising as we look towards the future. While not forgetting when Ninjago first got its footing, all the way back even to when brick-built dragons were a golden twinkle in LEGO's eye. Thanks for watching this deep dive into my dragon journey. While you're here, sound off in the comments and let me know which LEGO dragons are your favorites. If you'd like to support this channel, you can share this video around to people you feel might enjoy it. You can also donate an amount of your choice with super thanks by clicking the thanks button. Your comment gets highlighted in the comment section for your generosity. Be sure to like and subscribe, and if you like this video, you might enjoy either of these videos here. Talking Dragons is a pilot for a more specific deep dive on these dragons, and I'd love to hear what you think about it. I'm Pen, and I'll see you next time.